Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Kingdom Vision podcast. We've got Tim here with us today and Bruce. You guys say hello and
Hello, Tim.
tell us how you're doing. Tim, you start.
I hadn't been here since the new one started, I guess.
Well, you got one in. You were here for the first one.
Oh, I thought we redid that.
We didn't cut you out. We can, but we didn't.
Cut out.
Tell us about how Guatemala went real fast, like in a minute or less.
Well, it's probably one of the better sessions that I've had. So we had 56 students. It was in Guatemala, but probably more than half of them were Nicaraguans. They were brought in from Nicaragua. And there were a few from Ecuador. What was the other one?
Honduras.
And there was 6 or 8 of them there from Guatemala.
Cool.
Anyway, so it was a very productive
Session
of education. Yeah.
Awesome. Bruce, how are you doing? How's Baxter doing?
Well, I wasn't there this week. I had to grab somebody at the last minute that I love and respect, and his comment was, "I sure love the Baxter folks, and you guys are rocking it over there." So
cool.
that was fun to hear.
That's awesome. We wanted to jump into today. This is week 7 of our All Things New kind of devotional series. We're talking about Genesis 6, 1-4. And it's one of those passages that we were just talking before we started recording that not everybody digs into. A lot of preachers actually will avoid these passages. Bruce, you were talking about that yesterday. And there's this kind of trend is probably not the right word, at least a pattern. And Bruce, you talked about it a few minutes ago, that when people get to things that are weird or they don't understand, they just skip it. And I know some of you have given us feedback this week that this is maybe the first time you've heard some of this teaching about the spiritual side of things and stuff like that. And you've been in church for a long time. And there's one school of thought that says, hey, nobody ever taught me this. But there's another side to that coin that also says it's in the book. We also are responsible for reading the book ourselves. And one of the reasons we teach Bible study methods is because of that. Guys, God gave us his book, and he put this weird stuff in there sometimes. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And so you stay with us and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We are, again, here with Tim, and we're here with Bruce. Bruce is over, what'd you call it, the Nissan studio in Maybank?
Nissan Studios in lovely Maybank, Texas.
But this week we talked about the first of the, or no, it's the second of the 3 rebellions. First rebellion being Adam and Eve in the garden. This is the second one where, and Tim actually made a really good point, and maybe you want to touch on a little bit. When we teach Bible study training, we harp on read what's in the text and interpret what's in the text. The conclusions that we are discussing this week are not all in a single text.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of text to put together to figure out who these cats are that left their station and came into the daughters of men. There are others, because you got to Jude, you got to 1 Peter, that you have to put in the context of Genesis 6 to figure out that these Ben Elohim, these sons of God, are actually these spiritual beings. And one of the reasons that we don't want to fight about this thing, it is in the text, right, but this is not one of those things that we're going to go to battle over.
Right.
And I guess I would put out to you guys, Tim, I'll throw it to you because you're right here. Why do you think this is not something we should go to battle over with other Christians?
Well, I mean, a lot of people may disagree with me, but, probably one of the more prominent arguments in the Christian Christian world is the argument over once saved, always saved, but more specifically, Calvinism and Arminianism. But there's a lot of people that it has to be one or two of those. And what I find as an example, the reason not to worry about it, because a lot of people, they know the ism, Calvinism, Arminianism, they have no idea that those were two real people, and they've never read them, never searched out who those guys were.
Right.
Because I would tell you, if you actually did that, you would find out both of those guys were serious kingdom guys, and they would direct you back to the scriptures and start pursuing. You can do the same thing in this spiritual stuff. The secret of how the God is thinking is in this one thing. It's going to take up a lot of capacity that's not really going to go anywhere in the end.
Bruce, how do you look at that? I mean, do you feel like it's something that's a big deal to deal with, or what's your take?
It's one of those things where you have to be kind of careful that we don't end up trying to major in the minors. It's
well, that's exactly what it is. Yeah,
it's a great thing to understand more about what's going on around you as you kind of begin to understand that the spiritual and the physical are intertwined more than maybe you ever thought. But what does it have to do with your salvation? Not a lot, right? So that's the way I look at it. You can't get wrapped up in the spokes over stuff like this. It's good to know, and it's great to carry with you on your journey. It's not one of the hills to die on.
Right. And, I was telling Tim before we got on the air, there's two purposes in this whole devotional series. The grander 30,000 macro view of this devotion series is to give context to the story.
Right.
And that's why we jump ahead into Jude and First Peter, because they make these comments, especially if Tim's talking about people who are focused on Calvin or focused on Arminius or focused on this thing or that thing, whatever it is. Some people are focused on the New Testament and they dismiss the Old.
Right.
Or vice versa.
Oh, yeah. Well-meaning people.
Oh, yeah. Well-meaning, faithful believers.
The Old Testament doesn't count anymore. We're in the New Testament. That simple mindset, newer mindset, I guess maybe I would say. I can see how you'd come to that conclusion.
Yeah. Well, but when you get to the New Testament, let's just say you're in there and you come across a passage like Jude 6 or First Peter, and they're talking about the sons of God that went into the daughters of men, you're like, what is he talking about? And you can either skip it or you can know what he's talking about. And that's when you go back to Genesis 6 and pick up the story. It also gives context to the passage we read this week about when Jesus made the proclamation, well, who's he talking to? That's weird. Well, you got to go back to Genesis 6. You got to go, to Jude and to Peter to find out what's he talking about. And what we wanted to really kind of focus on today was just the fact that our world's messed up, guys.
Yeah.
It's jacked up in an enormous way. We all don't believe you watch the news. I hate the news, but give it a minute.
Not to oversimplify this, but whenever you read a text that doesn't make sense to you, at beside or below, there'll be notes about other text. Yeah. And man, Jack Dyer taught me a long time ago. He said, you can read commentaries and you can ask people, or you can interpret text with other text. And that's the safest way to do it. So when you see those notes in your Bible, when you don't understand something, go to those other places also.
Well, I know one of the best tools I was ever given as a young Christian, young pastor, was a Thompson Chain Reference Bible. And they've kind of fallen out of, they're not vogue anymore. I mean, you can still get them, but they're not the big thing that they were when I was coming up. But he did that. He chained those stories together, and it was a great way to build these broader stroke stories, because this week is kind of focused on what really caused the world to go to hell in a handbasket. Well, it did start in the garden. That was the problem. It started with the serpent. It didn't just start with Adam and Eve. I mean, there was some jacked up junk going on when he was tempting Eve, and then they fell. When it got a little worse, and then here comes this story, and there was a lot of water under the bridge between that, them getting kicked out, and this story. But now, in the time of Noah, because next week or the week after, we're going to talk about the flood. And it talks about how just depraved the whole world is. And you have to be like, what happened? Well, this is part of the story, according to Jude and Peter, that it took what was broken and broke it even more. One of the questions I wanted you guys to feel in our time is, as you kind of begin to understand this teaching about the spirit realm crossing over, the depravity of man, how does that reshape or help you put context to the brokenness of the world that's around? Bruce, you go first. Tim went first last time.
Yeah, it's kind of like we said a while ago. It's kind of given me a perspective on how much of an overlap there is in the spiritual and the physical. And as we're reading here in chapters 5 and 6, as we're going along, we see that this dark, ugly, broken place is all around this Noah guy. And what I love about it is, leading up to the ark, even, he was already set aside in a place to where he had to decide to follow God. He had to decide to listen for God. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, there was a lot of noise that wasn't the voice of God, and he had to decide in his own heart that I'm going to follow the voice of God, no matter how loud the peripheral noise gets. Because it hadn't ever, here's a dude talking about a flood and building a giant boat, and it's never rained, right?
Right. Yeah. And we're really going to focus on that next week. All week 8 is all about the flood and the reason for the flood and how jacked up humanity is. And I think for me, one of the things I take out of this particular story is it challenges me not to believe this idea that we're just basically good.
Right.
I mean, if we were basically good, we wouldn't have been in the situation that we were in Genesis 6, in Genesis 7, when we get into the rest of, in the flood. The scriptures we learned this week, that when Jesus was resurrected, he declared authority and defeat over even these nasty spiritual beings that came in and did this weird stuff. We don't always act like we believe it. Where can you share with us, Tim, some times in your life where you have made decisions, kind of forgetting that God's actually in control, God's actually in authority?
It would probably be easier to expound on the places that I knew he was in control, and I don't want to say fear, but
that's what it was. That's what it was.
Well, no, it was probably more in faith that I could pick up and press on. So in lesson 5 in this thing, and you tell about our story going to Mexico, in my simple way, and then what was going on right then and there, you were struggling with the reality of the situation at hand.
Yep.
When I say the reality of the situation at hand, had nothing to do with the cartels and all that stuff. That's where your flesh was part, and you were dealing with it. I would tell you that was a spiritual attack.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so, well, you can say, oh, sure, yeah, but
not then. I didn't.
I'm talking about people looking from the outside, looking into that, right? I'd seen a lot of that and been through a lot of that kind of stuff, so I was kind of cold-hearted at the time. I'm thinking, we got these people, we got to go deal with them. And I didn't want to come in and, smack you in the head with a bat and tell you to come on. That's what the Marine Corps would have done. And don't know how really effective that would have been. But that's not really what was happening at the time.
Yeah.
And I could see that, so that's why I called Tammy.
Let her come in and smack me.
Well, in the time that I was and I was a little anxious at the time just because we had these people were waiting on us. But I knew that I couldn't just demand and drag and but not in what you were dealing with at the time. And so I figured she could probably have a little more impact with that. And then I was just going to press on and start doing it anyway if it didn't work out, right? And so overcoming that, even in trepidation that you had, you're able to get a little clarity. It reminds me of John the Apostle going up when God tells him, I'm going to bring you up into heaven and I want you to write about everything that you see here. And that's not a guy who it was unfamiliar with the kingdom.
Right.
Compared to us, he was way more familiar with the kingdom. And he still had a hard time identifying and documenting what he saw. That's what I saw happening there. Yeah, there's been a myriad of times where maybe I knew kind of what was happening, maybe I didn't, but I would go on in my own strength and I'd get zapped out. And the Lord would still work things out.
Well, and I think looking back on that event, you're right. I was then, and I'm very familiar with how the kingdom works. You know, Bruce, you and I and Tim, together, Bruce and I have known each other forever. Tim, you and I have known each other forever in different circles. And we've seen amazing things that God's done firsthand. So it wasn't like I didn't believe in the Lord. It was like temporarily I forgot the reality of what this week really taught us was that if every legion of the enemy came at me at one time, they're still defeated in Christ.
Right.
And when Tammy called, the sobering thing that I heard from her was, you may die, so what? And it wasn't like I don't care about you or anything like that. It was just, if that's what he has for you, that's what he has for you, and that's what's best for you. And it was a good reminder that I wasn't in charge.
Right.
There wasn't any safety for me to go muster up. And I guess as we close out, we're kind of out of time. As this week was all about the context of another step in how this thing went off the rails. It just infused humanity with just another level of jacked up depravity. But Jesus came, Colossians 2:15, and he didn't just defeat them, he completely disarmed them. And that actually is going to apply again when we get into the third rebellion after Babylon, is that people run around terrified of the enemy, and the enemy's disarmed and defeated. And that's why he tells us to be still and know that I am God. They're not God. Bruce, you were talking about that. It's a good reminder that the Most High is the Most High.
Yeah.
And they know that. And to me, that should impact the way that we lead, the way that we follow God, the way we seek after God. Is no matter what it is that we're looking at, he has the ultimate say. That's just a hard truth for us to swallow sometimes, because some of the stuff he lets us go through sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would, as a form of encouragement, I would tell you this, and you really got to read this thing. You got to spend time in it and looking. Those things will come because that's making you look into the face of God, and he will begin to equip you. So other than that, you're just acting on what Matt says or what Bruce says, and there's place for that, but you can't be complacent in that.
Well, and I would even go a step further and say, we don't know everything. We're on this journey with you.
I would tell you, if you're awed and inspired by what you're learning in this, it ain't Matt, and it ain't me, and it ain't Bruce. That's God shaking you a little bit, saying, like Hebrews says, that when he's going to shake the earth and everything that's manly or earthly is going to fall away. He's shaking you to pursue him.
Yeah, well, and one of the things I want to emphasize in this whole study is, guys, we're on this journey with you.
Yeah.
We are discovering. Every time I sit down to write one of these things, I revisit something, and there's been several times already I'm like, oh man, I had either forgotten this thing or that thing, or got some clarity on something I actually thought that I had clarity on before. And I'm 30 years in, and I'm at least a millennium away from being where I'd like to be.
Right. Right.
You know, we can't put people up in this place like, oh, they got it all figured out. No, we disagree with each other. We sometimes read stuff we don't like or care for in the scriptures, but we have to come to a place where you say, I don't know, it's what it says, so I'll trust it, even if I don't understand it. The joy of having friends like this is that we get to walk this journey together and bounce stuff off of each other. I can't tell you how many times we have a group chat that we'll be like, hey, here's what I'm studying right now. What do you guys think? What's y'all's thoughts on this? And they're not always the same. I mean, Tim's wrong a lot.
A lot.
But, I guess what I wanted to end with was don't get wrapped up on the doctrine of the Nephilim and all of this stuff. I mean, study it, know it, but let the word, Bruce said it, let the word drive it. Commentaries are great, but just because some man or woman wrote a book about it doesn't mean they're right either. Let the word drive.
That's right.
You know, study the word. If you don't know how, we've got tools for you. Hit the app, go to Foundations, learn how to study the scriptures. Join us at Cross Brand starting March 1st. We'd love to have you and go through a week's worth of intense Bible study training. Just come do it. You know, get in the book, get in prayer, and get around people that you trust and love to follow Jesus with you. And he says, if you seek him, you'll find him.
I was just going to say, just that spirit of exploration, right? Don't ever lose that. The biggest red flag in the world for me is somebody who holds up a flag like they've already crossed the finish line. No.
Exactly. Tim, you got any last words? Real brief ones?
Well, I guess it's brief. So 2 Peter tells you to supply all moral excellence, and to that supply knowledge. And if you're waiting for the Spirit to jump on you and give you the desire to pick up the book and read it, he can do that. Did it with me. But then there was also places where I knew I needed to be reading it, but I didn't really feel like doing it. That's when you have to supply it yourself. And that's what Peter was talking about. Pick the thing up and read it.
Yep. And he'll honor it. And that's just the thing. He will honor your action. He will meet you in your action, and he'll reveal himself to you. Went a little longer today, guys. We knew we would. This is a little bit bigger topic. This next week coming up is talking about the flood. I'm going to talk more about Noah and kind of see where this particular story begins to take a shift and the redemption really begins to come in. Look forward to seeing you guys. Talk to you all later. See you later.